I'm making this clip on Maundy Thursday, although I'll actually be posting it on Good Friday. But over the Easter weekend, I'm not going to be doing a lot except uploading the video and otherwise doing things more connected with Easter. So I'm going to start my cold open with a view of my cooking of chicken to continue my patchwork theme. I'm not going to actually talk about the cooking of the chicken, but it's going very well, and I'm probably going to take even longer than a week to finish one chicken. And I will post about that on Tuesday when the Easter weekend is over. So I'm noticing that things are ramping up a little bit here in connection with the virus. Not a lot, because we still only have about 120 cases in Cambodia, and about half of them have recovered, and we've had no deaths. The government has some regulations in place. The schools and universities are all closed, although my college is still open because the students are all quarantined and they have some precautions of their own in place. Nobody is allowed in and out except me and the president, and everybody else has to be locked down, and they get food in and out in special ways that protect them and so forth. So on the whole, I think things are doing okay here. Some of the hotels near where I live are shuttered. I suspect that that's because most foreign visas have been cancelled or are no longer being issued, and the hotels rely on tourists and on business people. So that may not be a government shutdown, that may just be that they don't have anybody staying in them. I don't know. I get my temperature taken sometimes when I go to the supermarket, sometimes, not always. When I go to the post office, sometimes, not always. The ATMs all now have hand sanitizer at them and spray bottles. At the supermarkets, the post office, they disinfect all the counters all the time. There are now special markers at the supermarket so that when you stand in line waiting to check out, you can't get close to the person in front of you, and so forth. But generally speaking, social distancing is not a particular issue in Cambodia, as I've mentioned before. People don't touch each other, they don't stand close to each other normally, and they don't have gatherings of more than 10. Still allowed to travel completely freely. I ride my bicycle around. I wear a face mask. All of that seems okay. I did go today to get my retirement visa renewed. I have to renew it once a year. And I was interested to note that when I went to the place, which is an interesting combination, it's partly motorcycle sales and repairs, and partly visas and driver's licenses. And normally the motorcycle part is in an outer office, and the visas and licenses are in an inner office. Well, now all of the interior part is closed. The desk for visas and licenses is out on the street, on the pavement, and I went there and there was no one else there. I was a little concerned about whether they would renew my visa, although I don't think there's going to be any problem because I've been resident here. I'm not coming and going from other countries. So that should be all right. It's going to take a little longer, not because of the visa, but because the Cambodian New Year comes up on Monday, and all offices and government operations are closed for 4 days. So it's going to take 2 weeks to get it, but I don't really care because I don't need it for any reason. Don't need my passport for any reason. I'm not going anywhere. So what I want to do is talk a little bit more about the probabilities that I talked about in an earlier video, and just make some clarifications, I think we should call them, and we'll go from there. You remember that I said that if there's a 2% mortality rate from the virus, then you can conceive of 2% probability as being roughly the equivalent of naming a card in a deck, say 3 of spades, and then randomly picking a card. Then the chances of you picking the card that you've named is about 2%. That gives you a feeling for what probability is like in real terms. So it's not a lot, 2%. I doubt that you're going to name a card and pick it at random. You might, 2%. All right, but let's just broaden that out a little bit. That's the probability that anybody, young, old, middle-aged, sick, well, whatever, will die from the virus, because that's the number of people that do die, approximately. But circumstances change that. If you've got an underlying condition, if you've got, let's say, cardiopulmonary problems, diabetes, obesity, even if you're just like my age, then you have a higher mortality rate. So you have to break things down a little bit that way for a start. And you also need to break down the chances of getting the virus. And here you have choices. If you insist on meeting up with a lot of people, traveling to different places, and all those kinds of things, you've got a higher probability of contracting the disease in the first place. So I want to talk about choice, because random probability has to do with things that are not your choice. And there's an important point to be made here. I saw a meme on Facebook a few days ago, and it said, there is a 3% chance of dying of the virus. Okay, well, the percentages vary depending on where you are and so forth, but let's take that 3%. It said, should you be worried? And then it said, if you were offered a bowl with 100 Skittles, that's a kind of candy, could be M&Ms, whatever you want, little little candies. You have 100 candies in it. 3 of them have enough cyanide in them to kill you. Would you take a Skittle? Well, that's a nonsensical question if you're thinking about the probabilities of the virus, because the virus is not making choices like that. So my answer would be, no, I would not take one, because I'm not even going to take a 3% risk of dying by choice. That is, choosing the Skittle. So you could add some more factors. Well, what if somebody said to you, I will give you $1 million if you pick a Skittle from these 100 and 3 of them are laced with cyanide? No, still no. My life is worth more than the risk for $1 million or $1 billion or whatever you want. That's about choice. That's about risking my life on a bet. I'm not going to do it. But my analogy of picking a card out of the deck and it being 2% was about whether I should be worried or not whether I would choose to die or choose to risk dying. I'm not going to do anything to risk getting the virus that I don't have to do for some other obligation which basically doesn't exist. I mean, I do need to get food. I do need to go to the supermarket. So I will take that risk, but I'm also going to take precautions. And I think that my risk of getting the virus is not 3% or even 1%. I mean, I think it's minute. First of all, because of the number of cases in Cambodia, and second of all, because of the precautions that I take. I spend a great deal of my time isolated in my apartment. I go to the supermarket once a week. I get what I need, and I come home. I go to my college. I teach and come home. I don't do a lot of mingling with people outside of the college, except to do things like get my visa, go to the post office to get my packages, and so forth. So I take all the necessary precautions. The point I'm trying to make is that probability has several dimensions to it, and the issue has to do with 2 different things right now with the virus. One is what you should be doing to avoid getting the virus. There's some probabilities there. And then the probability of dying should you get the virus. Okay, now step 1, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to lower the possibility that I will actually acquire the virus in the first place. I want to get it well below 1%, or even 0.1%, closer to 0.001% if I can. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to lower those probabilities. The mortality probability is a different issue. I'm not going to run around and do everything without precautions, knowing that if I do get the virus, I only have a 3% chance of dying, so who cares? I'm not going to do that, because I'm making choices then that influence whether I live or die, and 3% is way too high for that. That 3% probability of dying represents to me not what I should be doing, but whether or not I should worry. And my answer is no, I'm not going to worry. I mean, I'm certainly not going to worry even about getting the virus, but I'm not going to worry about what should happen if I get the virus. I'm going to take all the precautions, but I'm not going to sit in my apartment worrying about what might happen in the future. And that leads to a whole new set of potential videos about past, present, and future, and about worrying. And we'll get to those next time. And in between, I will show you more of my chicken recipes, which are all in the service of showing you how to spin out your crucial ingredients like meats for a whole week without constantly going to the supermarket. I used to go to the supermarket practically every day because I like to have fresh foods. But now I just go once a week. That's part of my precaution. And in so doing, I end up with a chicken that I have to spin around in different recipes in different directions to keep my interest in eating up, and not go to the supermarket all the time. So until you get to my chicken videos on Tuesday, you can tell your friends, like and subscribe, and I will be back with you after Easter. I wish you a blessed and happy Easter weekend.